Hi, I'm Annabelle Sedano. Tonight we welcome several guests who will be joining us in the studio to share their unique reflections of growing up in Yanbu, Saudi Arabia. These people came from a variety of backgrounds and each had a different experience, yet they're all still connected by a sense of community with each other. Many even reestablishing this bond more than a decade later, as if no time had passed. What makes this place so special? We'll start our examination with a little background of the city they called home. You said once that life in Yanbu seemed almost like everyone was playing all the time. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, we grew up, as Brandon was saying, I mean, it was a small community. We became each other's families. So, I mean, our Thanksgiving, there would be 50 people. We would spend weekends going camping. We would go water skiing on the Red Sea. And it was, you know, our parents had a different a sense of community with the people they worked with, and the time that they spent outside of work were with the people they worked with. So we all, you know, we all grew up together. So even though they're not my brothers, and I haven't seen, you know, Brandon in about 10 years, you know, we get back together, and that sense of community and sense of small town still comes back out.
Great. Now, Chris, you once commented that your family seemed to be on its own when you moved back to the United States. Why is that?
Well, when you spend so long overseas, like, although we grew up with these people, our friends, you're still socially, you're a little behind what's happened in the States. And once you get there, you have to relearn what everybody's done and things like that, relearn your family. Because as Liz said, these were our family, and now we actually had blood relatives. It was just more of like integrating into the society again.
Why was leaving Saudi harder than, let's say, moving from one state to another?
Because when I left Saudi, I knew, and I can remember clearly driving to the airport. I was 11, and I knew I would never go back to Saudi. There would be no opportunity for me to go on a family vacation there or visit the home that I grew up in. As being a woman, and especially being from the U.S., I couldn't just pick up and be like, I'm going to go to Saudi for vacation. So once you left, that was it. You know, there was no going back, no visiting, you know, the house that you played in or slept over in. So it's not like moving from Florida to California. You can go back to Florida, but you can never go back to Yanbu.
Once a month we'd go out to the sand dunes and we'd have big bonfire, and people would gather around and play the guitar and slide down the sand dunes.
My favorite experience in Saudi Arabia is probably all of the culture. You have people from all over the place. You have people from India, you have people from Pakistan, you have people from Bangladesh and England and Australia and New Zealand. You have people from everywhere. And so you really get a mix of culture and a big group and a good experience.
It was the only town in the country where natives lived next door, side by side with the expats. You can't be narrow-minded in that kind of situation.
I remember that my neighbors, the Saudi men, would come out and greet me, say hi, offer me tea, offer me to come in their yard and play with their boys. They're very nice people.
My interaction with Saudi boys.
We would have interactions with the Saudis, some positive, some negative. But yeah, I remember that my brother and I would get into rock fights with some of the Saudi kids. Not really for any particular reason, just because, I mean, they were kind of Saudis and we were Americans. And it's not like, oh, you know, let's hurt these Americans, but it's just more like kids kind of fighting on the playground type of deal.
We'd have rock fights every time we'd walk by or ride by. They'd always be throwing rocks at us, so, you know, that was my main impression of Saudis growing up there.
I did interact with the Saudi Arabian boys quite often, not usually in good ways, because they didn't understand us. We didn't as well. They would kind of try to give us a hard time. There's rock fights, nothing harmful or anything like that, but it was all kind of in good nature, I suppose. But you know, in the beginning, it was kind of an adjustment.
Almost every day after school, we go out and we go up to the local college and we play soccer with them. sometimes that wouldn't end too well. They get upset with us and we get upset with them. Oh, that was a foul. Oh, you know, penalty. But we got along with them pretty well for the most part.
Growing up in Saudi Arabia made a lot of difference in my life. I know it helped me change some of my decisions, friends I picked, because the types of friends I made over there was kind of what carried on to over here. I can't think of any specific decisions I've made, but I know that everything I do in my daily life probably represents what I might have done over there.
I miss many things about Yanbu. I miss my old school, my friends, my teachers, my compound. It's weird how I still consider it home. I consider myself lucky to have had the experience of growing up there. My hardest adjustment was realizing what I had was gone when we finally moved back.
I did not want to leave Yanbu when it was time for my family to leave. It was one of the most depressing times in my life, and I went through a lot of hardship trying to adjust myself to this new life in America.
I know for a fact that I'm a lot more open-minded now than what I would have been if I had stayed living in Lubbock, Texas my whole life growing up. I can take a situation and see it from different perspectives because of living in that country. You're forced to see things from so many different points of view, to where I think that really has helped since I've moved back.
Did you grow up thinking your experience was normal?
I actually did. I didn't know anything beyond that experience, and I grew up thinking that such diversity and such sort of a rich cultural background was normal. My family and I, sort of came back to the States every year, and I visited, my old friends and cousins and other relatives who lived in the States and sort of compared their lives to mine. And I always considered that my life was sort of the status quo. And I always thought that I was very lucky, though. I definitely did appreciate, the sort of experience I had that all of us were able to have. I think all of us are sort of grateful that we were able to experience that kind of life. And I really, it sounds weird, but I couldn't have imagined growing up anywhere else or been more happy growing up anywhere else other than Saudi Arabia.
Right, because you get the best of two cultures.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
What made Yanbu Yanbu was the people around us, our friends, our family, and it's just, we were a really close-knit group. Like, everyone who knew, was, like, say, an expat or whose father was an engineer working there, they all went to the same school. So, I mean, we would always see each other at the, like, baseball games, the soccer games, and things like that. So, I mean, Yanbu as a city, I miss it, but without the people, it's not the same.
You have an interesting observation on the types of people that moved to Yanbu. How did these people make Yanbu such a close community?
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day from Yanbu, and we were sort of reminiscing on the past, and I was thinking that I think it's a type of self-selection, and I think people who are perhaps more tolerant, open-minded, willing to sort of be adventurous and live in this other culture, bring their children overseas to the Middle East. I think most people planned on staying just a couple years, but I think many people ended up staying much longer. So I think that, in particular, the people that I lived amongst and that I grew up with, all the people here today in our families, happen to be sort of a community of open-minded, tolerant, liberal individuals that made living there even better. So I definitely think that the types of individuals that decided to move to Yanbu affected how much of a wonderful experience that we all had.